ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Unit 5, Notes 3. This is Miss Humbert, and we're going to be talking about graphing quadratics in intercept form. So yesterday we talked about standard form, and today we're going to be looking at quadratics in intercept form. So the first thing I want to do is kind of remember that zero product property idea that we talked about last unit. Okay, so if we have two things being multiplied together and they're both equal to 0, in order to solve for x, what we have to do is we actually have to take each factor and set them equal to 0, which is exactly what I'm doing here. So setting each of those factors equal to 0, here you're going to add 6 to both sides, divide by 3, and you get x is equal to 3. For this one, you're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and you're going to get 2x is equal to -1, divide both sides by 2, and you get -1/2. Okay, so hopefully you're still kind of comfortable with that zero product property idea from last unit. I want you guys to go ahead, pause the video, and I want you to actually do this. I want you to actually pause the video and just quickly use the zero product property on that quadratic there. Okay, so let's talk about intercept form. Again, I really suggest pausing the video now, okay, then writing it all down, and then you can actually listen to what I'm saying. So don't try and rush through and get it all written down while I'm talking. So intercept form takes the form y is equal to x minus a, x minus b. Okay, that's a general form, and if you look, that's factored form of a quadratic. That's what we were working on all last unit. So our x-intercepts are a, b. So what I want you to notice is that there's that minus sign in there. So the x-intercept is going to be opposite of whatever it is in the parenthesis, and that's where that zero product property is going to become really important, because you're going to have to set each of those equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so now we have a new equation to find our axis of symmetry and or our vertex. Okay, so the new way we're going to be doing this is basically just adding the x-intercepts and dividing it by 2. So basically what that tells us is that our vertex is halfway between our two x-intercepts. Okay, so that's where that equation is coming from. All right, so here's one important thing to know, and this is at the bottom of your note sheet. So if you don't like this method, okay, so if you want to make a note to yourself at the bottom, if you really don't like this method, you can always use the box or foil to get it into standard form. Now, just for practice, I'm going to have you guys use intercept form, but if you were to see this on a quiz or a test and you're just really not comfortable with this form, go ahead, use the box, use foil, multiply those two binomials to get it into standard form, and then you can use that opposite of b over 2a. So let's take a look at those steps. So I suggest you pause the video, write this down, and then listen to what I'm saying. So the first thing we're going to do is determine the x-intercepts. We're going to do that by using the zero product property. We're going to take each of those factors and set them equal to 0. Then we're going to use that formula a plus b over 2 to determine that axis of symmetry. Then we're going to plug in the axis of symmetry for x to get our y. Just like we did with opposite of b over 2a, we're going to plug that back in to get our y. Next thing we're going to do is plot our vertex and our x-intercepts. So we want to plot our vertex, and then on the x-axis, those two intercepts we found on step 1, we're going to graph on the x-axis. And then we should have 3 points forming a parabola so we can connect them. All right, let's take a look at some of these. So let's take a look at number 1. So first thing I want to do is determine the x-intercepts of number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, when I'm finding my x-intercept, I know that my y is 0 if it's my x-intercept. So this is where the zero product property is going to come in handy. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to set each of those factors equal to 0. That's what's going to give me my axis of symmetry, okay, and my x-intercepts. So when I solve for x on this one, I get -3. When I solve for x on this one, I get -1. So there we go. We have x is equal to -3 and -1. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the two together and divide them by 2. By doing this, I'm going to get the x-coordinate of my vertex. So I took the two x-intercepts that I found, add them together, and now I'm dividing them by 2. Remember, our vertex is halfway between our two x-intercepts. So right here are our two x-intercepts, and here is the x-coordinate of our vertex. It's important that you distinguish between the two. The top two are the x-intercepts, the bottom is the x-coordinate of our vertex. Now, because that is the x-coordinate of our vertex, I can actually take this, and I can plug it in for my x's up there to get my y. So I have y is equal to -2 plus 3 and -2 plus 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug those in. Well, -2 plus 3 is just going to be +1. -2 plus 1 is just going to be -1. So you multiply those two together and you get -2, negative 1. So my vertex here is negative 2, negative 1. So now I've gone through all the work of calculating those. Now I'm going to plot it. So we're going left 2 and down 1. Let me plot that in a darker color for us here. So negative 2, so left 2, down 1. So I plotted that. Now I know my x-intercepts are negative 3 and negative 1. Notice that x-intercepts can be written as the point negative 3, 0 and negative 1, 0. So I'm going to go on my x-axis. Remember, x is the horizontal one. And I'm going to plot those 2 points on the x-axis. Then I have a pretty little parabola, and I can connect those 3 points to get my parabola. Okay, so this is just a new version we're trying for today. If you aren't liking this new way, when it comes to a test or a quiz, you can go ahead and multiply it into standard form. So let's take a look at this second one here. So again, we're going to set it up. So we're going to set it equal to 0. And then we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 1 is equal to 0, and x plus 3 is equal to 0. So you solve each of those for x. So right here are my x-intercepts. That's where I'm crossing the x-axis for this one. So now I want to go through and find the x-coordinate of my vertex. So let's do that quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take the average of these two numbers. I'm going to do negative 3 plus 1 divided by 2. So I'm adding those two together, and I get a negative 1. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is negative 1. So since I know that this is the x-coordinate of my vertex, I can plug that back into my original equation to get y. So I know that y is equal to negative 1 minus 1 times negative 1 plus 3. Well, negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. Negative 1 plus 3 is positive 2, and that is equal to a negative 4. So then our vertex for this parabola is going to be negative 1, negative 4. Again, if I'm moving too fast for you, things aren't making sense, the great thing about a video is you can pause and rewind. So make sure you do that if you really are stuck. So my vertex is at negative 1, 4. So I'm going left 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to plot that point. Then I see that my x-intercepts are at 1 and negative 3. So on the x-axis, I'm going to go over 1 and plot that point, and I'm going to go left 3, plot that point, and then I'm going to draw in my parabola. There it is. Isn't it beautiful? Let's take a look at number 3. Now, number 3 is I think it looks worse than it actually is. So we're still going to use that zero product property. So I'm going to set these equal to 0. That is hard to see. So let's set it equal to 0. And we have x times x minus 4. So I'm still going to take each of those factors and set them equal to 0. And solve for x. So my y-intercepts are that x is equal to 0 and x is equal to 4. So I know these are my x-intercepts. So those are going to come in handy for me later. So now I'm going to take the average of my two x-intercepts. So I'm going to do 0 plus 4 divided by 2. 4 over 2 is equal to 2. So that's the x-coordinate of my vertex. So if I'm writing out my vertex, that's the x-coordinate of my vertex. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it in to the original problem. So I have my y is equal to, now I'm going to do 2 times x minus 2. Oops, x is 2, we decided. So 2 minus 4. Oh, my color changed on me. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and we're going to multiply those out. So I have 2 times negative 2, which is going to give me a negative 4. So then my vertex I've finally found is 2, negative 4. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that over 2, down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then my x-intercepts are at 0 and 4. So I'm going to graph my beautiful parabola. Now I want you to pause the video and try number 4. Okay, so you're still going to be setting it equal to 0, finding your x-intercepts. Okay, and then I want you to graph it from there. Again, rewind it if you need to. Let's take a look at number 5. Okay, so this one you could go about doing the standard form. But just for good practice, we're going to factor it, and we're going to use intercept form. So we can go ahead and we can actually factor this right here. So we're multiplying to 35 and adding to 12. So I'm asking myself, okay, what multiplies 35 and adds to 12? Well, 7 and 5. I notice that the coefficient with my squared term is equal to 1. So that means that I can write this as an intercept form as x plus 7, x plus 5. So now I want to go through and use that zero product property and do my intercept form. So we're going to set it equal to 0, and then we have x plus 7, x plus 5 is equal to 0. So now we're going to set each of those factors equal to 0. So for our x-intercepts, we get that x is equal to negative 7 and x is equal to negative 5. So again, I just use that zero product property, set each of them equal to 0, and then I solve. So my x-intercepts are at negative 7 and 5. So now I have to figure out my vertex. So I'm going to start by taking the average. Okay, so when I do the average, I'm going to have negative 7 plus a negative 5 divided by 2. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. So that's the x-coordinate of my vertex. So now I want to go ahead and find the y-coordinate of my vertex. So to do that, I am going to plug negative 6 in for x. So I have y is equal to negative 6 plus 7 and negative 6 plus 5. So when I multiply that out, I get 1 times a negative 1, which is negative 1. So the y-coordinate of my vertex is negative 1. So let's go ahead. Now we're going to plot that point. Negative 6 is negative, or is going to be left 6, and then down 1 on that graph. From there, I know my x-intercepts from here are going to be at negative 7 and negative 5. So I'm going to find those 2 points on the x-axis, and I'm going to graph them. And voila, I have my parabola. So I want you guys to pause, or this is the end of the video, so I want you to finish up number 6 on your own, and I want you to factor it, use intercept form, and please don't forget to take the Schoology quiz once you're done.